Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to our digital conference, Rural Repopulation, Attracting Skilled Migrants. My name is Anna-Katrine Ebbesen, your host and moderator today, Senior Communications Advisor at Nordregio and Communications Manager of the Premium Project. 470 of you signed up to this event, and I'm thrilled to have so many of you with us. Researchers, policymakers, and practitioners all gathered to explore one of the most pressing questions facing rural areas today. How do we not just retain, but attract skilled people back to our communities? The structure today is simple, a mix of presentations, group interviews, and panel debates with plenty of chances for interaction. So let's have a look at the agenda. We first have a research presentation, Regions of Concern, Coping with Population Decline, where we'll give you an overview of important regional development indicators to consider. Then a group interview, where we get a closer look at the migrant mentality and our qualitative case studies. Then we have a panel debate, where we'll have a discussion of the barriers and solutions with policymakers. And finally, a fireside chat, as our moderator has called it, for the final part with external researchers, youth, and digital perspectives on mobility. That'll be a different moderator than me. And then we will conclude by announcing a few exciting invitations about this topic at the end of the event, so stick around for that. Before we dive in, a few housekeeping rules. The event is being recorded and will be made available after the event. We'll introduce speakers as we progress through the program. I won't run through all of them right now. And please feel more than free to use the chat throughout the session. We'll have some polls for you to participate in, but you're welcome to post comments and questions throughout the entire event. I have my colleague Sarah behind the scenes monitoring the chat to pick up on your questions, and she'll also provide helpful links along the way. But let's start off by hearing from all of you with a poll. Are you currently living in the same region you grew up in? Well, while you are answering that question, I'll ask you another question, and that is, and this one is for the chat, and that is which region you're tuning in from today. We'd love to hear from you in the chat, so please write which region you're tuning in from in the chat so we can see all the different regions represented today. Good. And while that's happening, I can say that your answers seem to confirm the theme of the day, because as I can see now, answers still coming in, 60% of you said no, you are not living in the same region you grew up in. Still 40% are. But today we're looking at, the theme of today is simple. Many move away from their hometown and from their home region, and few move back. What we want to better understand with the Premium EU project as a whole is the complicated cause behind this, the slow crisis of depopulation. We look at resilience a lot today in terms of short-term crisis and emergency preparedness. We can look at what just happened yesterday in Spain and Portugal. But what we look at with this project is the slow crisis that's building with depopulation and rural decline. Why people move from certain regions, and crucially, how those regions handle the changes. So with that, let's kick off our first session, Regions of Concern, Coping with Population Decline, with Dr. Becky Arnold, researcher at the Netherlands Interdisciplinary Demographic Institute, and Dr. Peter Meister-Brokema, researcher at Hanze University of Applied Sciences. Both are part of the Premium team and are working on the regional development and policy side of things. So over to you.
Well, thank you so much. I think I'm waiting for the presentation to start because I can't see anything. There it is. Double click and see if it works now. Click first. Yeah, it's working. So thank you all for joining this session. Really honored to be here. I was just having a look at the chat, and it's amazing to see where people came from. I mean, from all over Europe, so which is great. So I think there's a lot of interest in this topic. Well, Becky and I are going to talk about regions of concern, coping with population decline. And before we start, I'd like to show you a really grim picture first. It's about population decline up till 2100, so to 22nd century. And this map, based on projection from Eurostat, is basically showing that a lot of Europe is really going down in sense of population. So there's a lot of population decline. As you can see, this map is without any migration, because if we take that into account, the picture is still a bit grim, but it shows a lot of difference. And if we combine the two in this slide, you could really see that if we want to do something about population decline, we should probably take migration into account. And migration could be in all forms. Could be internal migration, external migration, but the main message is we probably need people if we want to do something about this population decline. Um, but having said that, let's focus a little bit on the effects of population decline, because what I always, and I'm working on this topic for a while now, especially on livability, and if people talk about population decline, it's always really in a negative way. Yeah? So it always starts with a negative spiral. So it starts with population decline. If people move away, it leads to a facility decline, livability goes down, people move out, and this becomes worse and worse. And that's still the case if you so I did a quick search on Google and I found a Dutch internet site from the government, and this is explicitly stating what's said here. When people move out, people become older, facility goes down, businesses go away. So it's a really grim picture. Let me have a look. Yeah, and this is also from the same website. It's really showing, well, less schools, less homes being built, less facilities, etc., etc. And in a way, this is true, but I also really truly believe that this could also be a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because if you look at this whole population decline, a lot of it is unknown. If we start again from the population decline, from the question mark, yes, it might be true that birth rates are going down. Yes, it might be true that facilities decline. But what actually happens is there's still a lot of debate about it. If you look at facility decline, and I will show you some examples later on, you could do a lot with technological innovation, with increased mobility. You could think about having all kinds of new economies. So it's not per se said that if population goes down, facilities decline per se. And the same goes, and that's mostly my area of research, on the livability decline. Because what we could really see in a lot of European regions is that even if facilities move out, if businesses go away, people are still happy. They still really want to live there. Maybe even if businesses go away, there is more space for green. There is more space for new phenomena. There's more space for cultural things. So it isn't said per se that if facilities decline, that livability decline. And if we take that all into account, maybe the whole picture is a little bit different, and maybe the whole idea of just focusing on that attracting new people isn't enough, or shouldn't be the only way to proceed. Well, need to click. And the same can also be said about our people, because no person is the same. We saw this in the general introduction from Anne-Catherine. People, 60% of you moved away, 40% stayed. There's a reason for that, because you're a person. You have your own networks, you have your own age, your gender, the things you think are important, the way you are educated, etc., etc. So it's not said per se that if something happening that people move out. It's people are agents, people have agency. And the same can also be said about a place. Let's see, for example, a supermarket. A supermarket, you could just say, well, it's a place where you could buy food, but it's so much more. There could be some social functions in there. People meet each other. It's also providing jobs, but it's also a place where people could go, maybe can rest, even if it's raining, etc. So it isn't a strict model. That's my whole thing for today. So it's not only about people, it's not only about facilities, but there's so much more around it, and they're connected in a lot of ways, basically. So what can you do? And that's one of the main topics of today, solutions, policies. I think you could focus on two things. You could focus on the effects, and I've given two examples here. So you could see a supermarket, for example, as a place where you could also have an ATM, have a GP, have all kinds of other functions. So you could really combine facilities. The same can be said about the mobility here in the left corner, no, right corner. Because this is a hub, so you could basically, for example, introduce self-driving buses, etc., to help you tackle the effects of population decline. But what you could also do is focus on causes of this decline. And this is a rather complicated scheme, so I won't go over it into much detail. But what I mean here is that it's really depending on how you what your frame of the problems is. So some people see this in an economic perspective, so they focus on attracting new businesses, etc., etc. But if you, as you can see in this, well, as I said, rather complicated scheme, there is so much more going on. And I think at the moment there is a realization, not only among policymakers but also among researchers, that you shouldn't focus on creating jobs alone. Maybe there is a necessary level to it, but you need to focus on so much more. Could be digital infrastructure. We will talk about that later on, but it could also be focused on livability aspects as green, as parks, swimming pools, etc. So what we are doing now, and I only go over this briefly, because what you see is that a lot of these policies are rather vague, and there isn't a lot of research on the effectiveness of policies. Well, in a way there is, but a lot of those policies are being judged in their own narrative. So if you really have a policy of creating jobs, well, you measure the amount of jobs created and that's it. And then the policy fails or not, but you're not focusing on everything. And that is what we're trying to do in this project. So we created a web crawler, which is automatically downloading all kinds of policies, and we analyze them in the light of specific livability indicators. And Becky will tell a little bit more about it later on. So to give a new way of looking at policies and to understand why some policies or combinations of policies work or not. And yeah, that is a dashboard, but we're going to talk a little bit about that later on. So what do we need to be more effective? I think, well, we need some new kind of modeling. What we did before is focusing a lot of economic indicators, creation of jobs, GDP, income, etc., etc. But what we did in this project, and what I think is really important, is that we should include so much more indicators. For example, on the social aspects, living environment aspects. So are people happy? What do they feel safe? Is the air good enough, etc., etc. And if we combine all that, especially with the policies we also can have a close look at in our policy dashboard, then I think it's so much more easier to say why people are moving, how can you let them stay, what do you need to do, which buttons do you need to press, except for the economic ones, because we are all aware of that, but which other buttons are there, which one can you push? And if you do that, I'm convinced that this whole negative, grim picture will be not so grim at all. Thank you. I'll give the floor to Becky.
Great, thanks. I just need to check if I can control the slides. So if I click on that, okay, cool. I've got control now. Yeah, so hi, I'm Becky Arnold. I'm going to be very pleased to tell you about the research we've been doing, following on from Peter's nice talk. And a lot of our research centers around the question, why do people move? And people move for all sorts of reasons. And a lot of those reasons are very personal. But generally speaking, when somebody moves from one region to another region, it's because they think they'll have a better life there. But what is a better life? That means different things to different people. Different people will prioritize different aspects of a region when they're making the decision, this seems like a good place for me to live, or this doesn't seem like a good place for me to live. So we've got this really simple question, why do people move, with a lot of really complex questions to answer within it. But I think they're really worth exploring because it's really important if you understand what people are prioritizing, what is attracting people, what is turning people off. You can then use that to answer the further question, what policies are best targeted to attract people to my region to sort of try and fight and mitigate depopulation. One thing here, when I'm talking about migration, I'm talking not just about international migration, but also internal migration, so people moving within the same country. So to explore this sort of like nest of difficult questions, we've collected two big data sets. So one on regional development data, which Peter referred to earlier. This is across the EU from 2010 at the subnational level, so the NUTS 3 level, to use the EU terms. And it's in 3 dimensions. So the economic dimension, we look at things like GDP per capita and unemployment. For the social dimension, we look at things like crime rate and equality. And for the living environment dimension, we look at things like good healthcare and low air pollution. And altogether, we collect about 37 regional development indicators. The other data that we collect is internal migration data, as well as external, but for the moment, I'm going to talk about internal, looking at people where people move from and to. And what we do is analyze how these two data sets sort of link to each other. So what are people prioritizing? Where are they? What are the winning regions? What are the losing regions? And what are the regional development profiles of those sorts of regions to understand what people are prioritizing? Now, it's a whole bunch of research, which I don't have nearly enough time to go into here, so I will give you a couple of headline results. The first result will not be any surprise. People in their 20s and 30s prioritize the economic dimension when they are making their migration decisions. This is the foundation of brain drain. It's generally younger people moving from the rural areas to the big cities for opportunities. And there are limited things that policymakers can do about this because rural areas are not cities. Rural areas don't want to be cities typically. However, that doesn't mean there's nothing that policymakers can do in this area. So things like making sure that there are opportunities available, that there are good jobs, there are things that can be done. In the future as well, there is the possibility that as remote work potentially becomes more common, the importance of the economic dimension in these age groups may decline, but that's for the future. The other finding I want to tell you about is what I think is more interesting and potentially more useful. And that is that we find people above their early 30s, so about 35 up, care more about the social and the living environment than they do about the economics when they're making migration decisions. And that's important because those are arenas where it's easier for rural or vulnerable regions to compete with the cities. And these are people, early 30s onwards are still, useful people to have. They may be sort of looking for a nice place to settle down, to raise a family, or even people sort of like coming towards the end of the career, looking for a nicer place to live. So there's things to be done in this area. A couple of other findings of this I think are really interesting is we find that the highest educated people prioritize the social dimension over the living environment dimension. They care about the social about twice as much, whereas secondary educated, so medium educated people care about the social and the living environment about the same amount. And that's useful if you want to be able to direct policies of regional development to attract particular types of people. So that's good general stuff. But what if you want to know about your region? What policies are best targeted to tackle depopulation in your region? What are your region's strengths and weaknesses? One thing we've produced so far is this Atlas of Regional Development, which you will get a link to later. That's a reasonably technical document, but if you scroll past, you will find a whole bunch of maps which look like this, which will show you the landscape of regional development in Europe for all of the 37 regional development indicators that we collected. So you can use that to see, where is my region doing well, where is my region doing badly compared to other regions in my country or on the European scale. For the dashboard itself, we're going to have this information in a much more glossy, interactive, zoomable way, so it's easier for you guys to explore, and we hope that'll be very useful. That will also have the ability to look at the time series as well, so you'll be able to scroll back to like 2010 and zoom forward and see how the landscape of regional development has changed, which is useful if you want to identify regions that have done really well or have improved in dimensions that you also want to strengthen. So, for example, from this, we've been able to identify that Western Romania and Southwestern Bulgaria have really improved their infrastructure since 2010. Spain's massively improved its digital access, a couple of last days notwithstanding. The Emilia-Romagna region in Italy has massively improved in innovation. The other way that we think that the dashboard will be useful, as Peter referred to, is we are collecting lots of policies, and we will be able to give you suggested policies tailored to your region. So this is my region. We already know stuff about that region's development profile, where it's strong, where it's weak, and so on. And it's like urbanization level, and to be able to suggest policies related to the area and particular areas that you want to strengthen. So we're very excitedly working on that. We hope it will be a really interesting and useful tool. And with that, I will hand back over to Anna-Katrine.
Thank you very much, Becky. That was right on time. And unfortunately, I've also not given you much time, so there's not much time for questions from the audience. But as they're coming in, I would suggest and hope that maybe Becky and Peter can answer some of them in the chat. So please do keep the questions coming, and Becky and Peter will be happy to answer. And I will also talk a little bit more about the dashboard later on. But now we move on to the next segment. Thank you, Peter and Becky, for setting the stage and framing the issues so well. Last year, there were more people living outside of their birth countries than at any other time in modern history, according to the United Nations. One of the most famous legal frameworks for migration is, of course, the right of free movement within the European Union, which allows EU citizens to live, work, study, and retire in any member nation. And around 1.3 million people migrated within the EU in 2022. But still, European economies are looking at labor shortages and rural decline in the near future, or it's happening already in rural regions. Migrants are seldom settling in remote areas that really need them. And that's what we're going to go deeper into now, deeper than what the data shows, and further into some of the more complex individual decisions behind migration patterns, especially return migration as well. We are joined by three fantastic researchers, also from the Premium team. Dr. Hilal Arslan, lecturer at Hacettepe University, Institute of Population Studies. Claudio Ströhle, anthropologist researcher at the International Institute for Applied Science. And Dr. Michael Wanke, sociologist at Krakow University of Economics. Our conversation will be structured around three key topics. First, the migrant mindset when settling down or returning. Second, the value that returnees and newcomers bring to rural regions. And finally, the barriers they encounter and how we can better support them through policies. But let's get started with the first topic, the migrant mindset when settling down. And I think I'll start by asking you, Hilal, how do gender dynamics influence the decision to return or stay in host regions? What are we seeing in the Turkish case studies?
Thank you very much, and welcome you all also to join with us. Indeed, I would like to share our field observations in order to answer your question. And I would like to also say that we already almost finished the Yozgat fieldwork, which is the province has the highest rate of highest share of return migrants from Austria. And our second province would be the Karaman. We already started the field work. And what we did is that we made in-depth interviews with the return migrants who with their families also, and we also completed stakeholder interviews. So all our observations based on this data, I should say this first. And indeed, gender dynamics plays a crucial role, both in return decisions, like whether to stay in a host country or to return back. And what we observe is that in the beginning of the migration trajectories, like because from Turkey to Europe, the migration started with the labor migrants, the first generation migrants. And then we observe the involuntary immobility or voluntary immobility, especially for the males, for the economic reasons. The first they migrated and they left their wives and children behind. And we see that this reinforces the traditional gender division of labor at households, like the woman has to deal with the kids, the child care, and also to maintain the social ties in the region. And indeed, they even didn't ask whether they would like to go to migrate or not, most of the cases. And then after this labor migrants, we see that the chain migration started with the family reunification with Austria. And what we observe is that, especially this issue of imported grooms and also the brides issue. And even today, Yozgat is a city has the highest incidence of child early and forced marriages and consanguineous marriages. So what we observe from our field that these important brides, usually they are also the child and early marriages. And most of the time, like they have like due to this patriarchal bargaining within the household, when they move to the most of the time the Vienna from the Yozgat to Austria, majority of them, especially from Akdağ Madeni region, lives in Vienna. They stay again within the household and took the responsibility of childcare and domestic uh, household chores, and this was their responsibility. And this creates the like less integration to the whole society due to like language barriers, language learning barriers, and also less a participation into labor market and educational opportunities. And what we observe also this after this reunification, this couple power dynamics, like this relationship between the husband and wife, when they make the return decision, that who really decides. What we observe that the head of the households, especially the man, decides for this decision for the children and their wives. Even we have cases like one shared us that the guy destroyed the passport of the wife and kids in order to prevent them to like one day they return back to the Austria again. So this is a kind of again what we see enforced or involuntary mobility or return decisions from the Austria to Turkey. And we can also, what we observe, I think I could also share this last point. This is also main important gender issue. Like this, the melancholia of like migrant melancholy, what we call is also gurbetçi hastalığı. It's a kind of the sickness, what we observe among women, that because they want to, in one case, she forced to migrate to the Vienna, and she didn't like it. She left her family behind. But then her return is based on this sickness because she got a psychiatric therapy and all this medical care, and also she was not at happy after she returned, because then she lost also most of her freedom to move, because the females also do not want to return back to their villages because of like more less gender equal living environment for them. Like they are much more under control and surveillance. So I can talk more on this kind of issues, but the gender dynamics is really important, like when we interpret all these return outcomes and issues.
Yeah. Very, very valuable to hear this side as well, Hilal, especially, and the reason that we have Turkey as an important case study as part of and partner in this project is, of course, because the Turkey serves as a very important gateway between the East and West. It's not only a net reciprocant of people from the Middle East and Africa, but it's also a huge source of migrants to European countries, particularly Germany, France, and the Netherlands. And the main issue is like you're talking about as well, Hilal, is if you have melancholy, if you can't get the family, the partners to stay when you have, let's say, a big male proportion of migrants coming to a certain country, then it won't be viable for them to settle down. And I think you bring up a super important point. And unfortunately, we are a bit short on time. We could have a whole webinar on this, and I suggest that we will in the near future. So I want to jump to the next topic. And Claudius, you've also studied the Turkish migrants. I will get to you after Mikhail, but first I want to ask Mikhail about the value of migration. And you studied the Polish migrants a lot, Mikhail, and I want to ask you, and Ukrainian, different migrant segments. And I want to ask you how migrants' potential are being underestimated in rural regions, because now we just talked about the settling issue. Can you talk a little bit about that? And maybe keep it a little as short as you can, but I know it's tricky. Yeah.
Yep, yep. Of course, it's a complex phenomenon. Basically, when it comes to Polish migration to the west of the European Union, it's all about de-skilling. So, majority of folks who are going to work, they would work below their education and skills. They would, pick tomatoes because of the structural reasons, the differences in salaries and all that. So obviously there is a lot of potential in this, but this is very well studied and covered in the literature. What is not that well covered, and this is what we are trying to unpack a little bit as well, is the migration capital these people have. So they acquire on the way, they acquire these very different types of skills that have to do with being aware of different ways of living, different ways of doing things, coping with different challenges in their lives. And there are generic skills that can be used in rural areas. And when we are talking about rural areas, we are talking both about the destination and the let's say sending regions. Yep. Very briefly, or do you want me to
Very
continue?
briefly, no, yeah.
Yeah, this is it.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were continuing. Sorry, I was taking notes as well. Okay. Thank you for that, Mikhail. And also, we will get more into these economic factors as well when we get to the panel debate as well. So these are very important. It's very important to understand the migrant side of this, and especially when you talk about the value and how it's not being seen in a holistic way. And I think I want to breach into the topic of the barriers, the integration and reintegration issues, and ask you, Claudius. You've also done some local case studies. What do policymakers, and this leads up maybe to our panel discussion as well in the next segment, what do policymakers often get wrong in the integration process?
Yeah, I can maybe think of an example in Upper Styria, a research field where I was engaged very much. They are like declining in terms of population and like economy, but they do have some big companies, and I think they are the most like the biggest factors in like migration policies. So there is like an NGO that recruits now young migrants, apprentices from Spain, and they also recruit care workers from Colombia in cooperation with companies as well. Whereas these migrants are coming successfully, we see the problem that they, after they have the working permit and so on, they tend to move on to other cities within Austria. So they are coming, the migration policies work, they attract highly skilled migrants, but they're not staying. So that's why there is like other NGOs popping up and like companies that try to work on what they call social onboarding, because they say it's not enough that people come to our area and work there, but we have also kind of take care of like going to hikes with them, learning the language, and like create a community, because especially people that come from cities where it's very noisy, and then you come to a rural area where it's very calm, then what one of the stakeholders said, the noise begins within your head, so you start to think a lot. And that's what we have to keep in mind in rural areas, that people not only come but also stay.
Yeah, exactly. And this social onboarding you were talking about as well, in seeing the whole journey of the migrant and not just the immediate need. I want to get back to you, Hilal, and ask a little bit about the significance of the first female migrant service in Yozgat, and especially those who are thinking more about the whole family aspect and not just the immediate need for work.
Thank you. Indeed, this is a very important question for our the field study also, because the migrants, return migrants, in terms of the policymakers, they are like they are not that supported, like for their business entrepreneurs or their other like initiatives. They are not well supported. And here, what we see is that like this this woman has to return back due to health reasons. However, it's a really good success story because she made establish a cleaning company in the region, and then this small district, usually what we observe as small and medium scale enterprises, mostly run by the men. And then, so there is not really woman-friendly working environment within region. So this one company, encourage women to work with them because she works with the woman and creates a good employment opportunities, job opportunities for women. Also, and also she somehow transfers the skills and experiences that she got it in Austria to the district itself. Like she she taught how to drive, and then she encouraged the women to take their, for instance, driving license. So this is a kind of rare or not normal within that district, because usually when we talk with the return migrant men, what we observe that usually the women do not work, and then they think that, okay, we are earning money, we got so much money, why do they work? So that's why I think this company, like this example, is important, not only for the in terms of the return capital, like not only economic capital, but also social and cultural capital that for the region to transform, or for the district to transform, especially to create more like gender equality norms and values within the region. So I think this is very important for also empowering women in the region, like to as an example for the other women also to have this kind of like woman-led entrepreneurship to encourage. I can say this.
Thank you very much, Hilal. We're getting some questions in here as well. And I think we have a question here about schools, and is it vital also to work with together with children and youth in rural areas? And I think, Mikhail, you and I at one point also talked about the importance of thinking in the family aspect when children reach a certain school age, how that also matters to decisions in terms of either staying or returning. Can you talk a little bit about some of the main integration issues for migrants returning to Poland, maybe particular around that kind of time?
Yeah, this is completely new phenomenon. So post accession, post boom, a lot of people went to work abroad, but then time passed. They would have spouses, marriages, kids. Eventually, these kids would reach the age of schooling, and then different factors like nostalgia, for example, they kick in, but also the extended family support, they kick in, and people start thinking, okay, do we pursue our life trajectory in this region where we migrate to, or do we want to come back and equip our kids with the heritage language, with the milieu where we would grow up and all that. By the way, we also discovered this a little bit too much of diversity discourses among Polish people. They, you have to understand that Polish society is extremely, or used to be extremely homogeneous at the time where, a lot of people were going to work abroad. Now they are coming back to a quite different country, but the nostalgia is, okay, let's come back to a rural area where we would have, like only people like us, So for these different reasons, when this biographical, milestone of a kid entering a school age is pivotal, they would come back. What is the problem? What is problematic in case of these remote Polish regions where we worked is that the policymakers, decision makers over there, they do not recognize this phenomenon like almost at all. There is a little bit of extra schooling hours for the reintegration purposes. They are inscribed into Polish law. Of course, they are. But when we talk to local policymakers and ask them, hey, so, you are a traditionally a migratory region. Now people are coming back. what are your policies in place? There's enormous amount of people coming back. They have, different skills. The kids are bilingual. They, would go to kindergartens in different countries. They speak 2-3 different languages. How are you going to use it? And the universal answer was, like, no, well, this is normal. People are coming and going. And so everyone was surprised, including the migrants in question. But they do face different challenges. The kids who are brought up in different types of schooling, they are adjusted to and used to different types of upbringing in terms of the educational facility. And sometimes, as it comes out from our interviews, they would have difficulties in resettling in Polish school, for example. Yeah. So these are these child-related or family trajectory-related issues. There are more issues, of course, within this framework of the lack of the recognition of the return migration. And very often, I'll just bring up one example. A couple of weeks ago, I interviewed, but this is a typical example, right? It's not only an anecdote, but this is a type of double the skilling. So a guy comes back from Germany and Austria, where he would be building tunnels to the flatlands of Poland. No tunnels here. His expertise is worthless, right? It could be translated into something. Definitely, but neither him nor the local rural area where we went to have ideas how to work with this kind of unique skills that are he is a highly skilled tunnel electricity circuits builder. But his potential here is worthless. Yeah, this type of lack of recognition.
Yeah, that's a super good point. This kind of like a gap in skills in terms of coming back and seeing, well, what's needed versus what are their skills in. You also mentioned the nostalgia aspect. How can this be kept alive to have people return to their home regions? Claudius, you mentioned social onboarding. And Hilal, you mentioned the aspect of remembering women as well, and the family aspect of this. I'm sorry we don't have time. I wanted one final question for you, Claudius, but I think we have to move on to the panel. I think we're going to have to have a repeat and an in-depth webinar about this specific subject, as I can also see the questions coming in. So maybe you can help me out, colleagues, in this group interview to help answer some of the questions in the chat as we move forward. But then I will say thank you very much to you. Hilal, Mikhail, and Claudius for these insights and for also kind of setting the scene from the migrant side of this perspective. But now we're going to shift gears over to a broader strategic focus on political action. And I'm going to introduce our panelists first. Joining us, we have Roger Barras. He is a Regional Development Public Officer at Lleida Provincial Council in Spain. He's an expert in urban and regional governance with a background in political science and urban studies, and he works as a researcher and consultant for metropolitan and local government in Catalonia. We also have Simon Gulakson, Mayor of Fulu Municipality in Faroe Islands. He is also a warehouse operations manager of Faroe Ship, as well as vice chair of the administration of home and elderly care in the Faroe Islands. Also joining us is Alessandra Di Rensis. She works for the Cabinet Office of the President of the Tuscany region. Alessandra works with local development strategies under the programming and evaluation of EU cohesion policy programs. She is also a PhD candidate in urban studies and regional science at Gran Sasso Sinse Institute. And finally, Leo van Wissen, professor and former director of the Netherlands Interdisciplinary Demographic Institute and head of the Premium Project. Leo has been working with migration modeling, demographic modeling, forecasting for many, many years. So we're happy to have him also share from the premium side of things. We've brought these panelists together today because we need their practical insights and experiences to supplement the science and discuss attractiveness strategies. How can regions not just survive, but thrive in a competitive world? And what does it really take to make a place sticky, to attract and retain talented newcomers and returnees? We'll start by identifying the key problems and then move into possible solutions with hopefully a lot of real examples from these different places. And please also feel free to share in the chat both questions and your own examples. Good, but let's dive into the first question and discuss the problem, how the scale of the problem of depopulation. And I want to start with you, Alessandra. What hurts more, losing people who grow up in Tuscany's rural regions or failing to attract new residents?
Difficult question, actually. I suppose, obviously, the answer is both. But then the point is that, well, we have to look at like population growth and what is happening to the demographic decline in our region. So we need to try and attract basically new workers, because that is what is happening in peripheral region, as Peter was telling at the beginning. We need to start to reignite this spiral upwards, in this case, attracting new ideas, new people, being old and new families. And this is what we have been trying to do in Tuscany in recent times, because depopulation is happening basically everywhere. But when it comes to peripheral region, it's also a problem also of, holding on the natural environment and everything. We've been having floods in Tuscany big times. And this is also due to the fact that of abandonment of these rural areas. So we need to start thinking about both sides of the problem, basically. I'll be very quick because I know we have lots of questions. So
yes.
In case I evolve later and everything, just quick, big short highlights.
Thank you, Alessandra. And I do apologize to everyone for the time constraints. It's these digital times, but I can encourage everyone by saying we will be hosting more webinars on more specific areas so we can get in depth in the future as well. Then I want to ask you, Roger, what brain drain and demographic decline looks like in the rural municipalities of an urban region, because you're, of course, representing a more urban region, but here demographic decline also happens. What can you tell us about Lleida and Barcelona as a whole?
Sure. Thank you for inviting me. So actually, Alessandra was touching some relevant things, because the population, it's always a matter of layers, no? In the region of Lleida, if we look at cities, municipalities, urban municipalities, actually the population is not decreasing. But if we look at the rural municipalities around Lleida, they are suffering a lot, especially in the Pyrenees and also in the more agricultural landscape. So the thing here is how we balance these repopulation strategies, no? So if cities are maybe attracting population, how we can let these people also live in the more rural municipalities which are struggling, no? And I think one key strategy is looking at the supplementarity of each landscape. So how people, for example, working in the service sector in the more urban municipality can be attracted to live in the rural municipalities, for example, through quality housing or livability, as we were saying before, no, natural landscapes, which is also a matter of of quality of life, etc. So I don't want to extend too much more.
Maybe I can also just expand a little bit on that question, because this is super good and already onto the solution side of things, and also what is unique about these more rural areas. Mikhail before was mentioning this nostalgia aspect of certain when certain residents move back. Do you see a lot of that happening as well in this specific region, or is it more people who've grown up maybe in urban environments and actually want an escape from that and want to get away and then experience the contrast?
Sure, that's a very, actually I was taking notes on this issue. So what I experience is this idea of returning young people, actually, early 30s, as we were saying, and as you mentioned before, some of you, education, I think it's a key issue here. So we have to just as an expression, as an anecdote or as a case that is relevant and repeated in some debates I have been. This idea of I went for people that have moved to metropolitan area, let's say Barcelona, which is attracting a lot of people from the whole region of Catalonia, and this idea of I went for when I have starting a family and I have my first kids and yeah. This idea of I want for my children what I had when I was growing up in the rural region, and putting some value in education in rural areas, in the rural schooling system, which in Catalonia it's different from the urban centers, the education model. This I think could be a strategy to attract these returnees, which and coming back to the first question that you made to Alessandra, I think it's key, the capacity of a municipality or rural region to attract those maybe high skills people that they grow up in their region, and you let them go to study to get their first experience in the job market and etc. And they come back with a lot of skills and networks that in the future can be useful for the whole region. So this idea of building the structures, the conditions for these people to come back and start a new life with all his other skills and knowledge. I think that's super key.
Super good points. And I think I'll come back to you at one point, because we also had a talk before, Roger, and also you, Alessandra, with how national governments are investing to make sure that some of these initiatives aren't just happening on their own, but they actually get value and get prioritized. But I want to move over to you, Simon, because as you mentioned in the beginning, you might just be not just even rural, but I would dare to say hyper rural with 38 residents. This is on another level, of course, and that makes it very interesting to ask. Now that Roger has mentioned these things, that rural schooling systems could be a strategy, and to get young people, professionals to come back, we need to look at some initiatives and strategies. When it comes to Fulu or Fuluar, might be pronouncing it in the Danish way. What challenges come in, and maybe which advantages as well to having this island municipality like you have that's so spread out? Oh, you're muted, Simon. Oh, sorry, Simon, you're still muted. It might be try to, yeah, now you're good. Yep.
Yeah, well, first of all, the challenges are immense, obviously, because not only Fugloy is an island, which is we have the North Atlantic all around us, and to get to the island, you need to have a public transport, and that's the first issue. And the second issue is obviously the Faroe Islands is based in the North Atlantic. So in generally, the Faroe Islands is a rural area. So we are actually a rural area in the rural area. And today, I think that the most, we have about 85% of the islands connected with the subsea tunnels. And so it's easy to move around. So I think you can reach around the islands for 85% of the population within 1 hour, 1.5 hours. So that is actually our challenge. And but to look at nevertheless, we think that it's very important when you live in the North Atlantic. It's important that you make usage of all your islands, and in terms of you can do some things that might attract people for specific tasks. Now, in general, for Fugloy, it seems like it's very important for us that we concentrate on people that and attract people with routes to the islands because it's easier for them to adapt to the environment, and they know how to how the problematic it can be to get back and forth. You cannot use this island. You cannot say, for example, that you live physically in the island and then have a job in our mainland, because it's not always possible to transport by air or boat. So what do you do? And farming is limited, but then again, it's technology today allows people to do a lot of their tasks, no matter where they're based in the world. So we tend to say that if we have a hyper technology system with some basics for what people might require to stay in a rural area, it might it might attract skilled labor for a certain amount of time. So it will be like not for like you stay for the rest of your life, but I mean, for maybe you can have people that can stay for 1 year or 2 year or whatever it is. So I think that's the way that we're going to move forward, and obviously we try to have the basics needs for a small community to survive.
Yeah. Very, very interesting. It's a kind of different playing field a little bit, but still there are some similarities in having hyper technology, or at least understanding that to get people remote, they still need to be connected and have that kind of feel that they can at least not be completely separated. And I want to ask, since you get these, you have these attraction strategies for skilled labor, we know at least from here at Nordregio that the Faroe Islands is experiencing people moving back, and also a surge of people moving to the Faroe Islands. But I'm interested to know from Fuglia, the perspective, which segments of people, and how do you manage when an entire family or you have migrants moving back that aren't just there for labor, but they're also there to settle down and to create an identity, a sense of belonging?
I think that's the biggest challenge. First of all, I mean, in general, what I can see from all the other participants, we all have the same problem, because when you are rural, you have you need policymakers to come up with funds. So and it's a big issue, because the smaller you are, the less your voices will be heard, and that's a problem. And but however, if you have people who are, for example, the reason why I am in Fugla is because it's been I've inherited a family farm that's from 1667. So it's that's one of the, but I'm an accountant, and I work as the warehouse manager at the coal store of ferry ship in Klaksvik, because that's what I need for an existent. But when I used to work with in the fish business some years ago, I spoke to a friend of mine in Inverness in Scotland, and they said, "Remember, Simon, when you live in a rural environment, it's very important to be diversified." So it's that's what we are trying to put forward, or what I'm trying to put forward. We need to have a diversification in terms of, I mean, like I said, it's very limited what you can do with farming, but tourism is quite a thing that we can do, and then you can attract labor and families relating to that. And my idea is that instead of using tourism as an ingredient in the farming, which is too small, you can use farming as as an ingredient in the tourism, because then you can I mean, you can have a much higher and bigger turnover, and also it's much easier to attract people today, I mean, in 2025, that's relating to tourism. And I think that's the way we're going to try and move forward. And second of all, I'm actually building 3 houses there for renting, but I own a gallery in Klaksvik, and an art gallery, and which I'm going to use that gallery to attract artists. I mean, you can be a painter, or you can write a book, or you can do a record, whatever. But you can say, for example, that you can use this cottage for 3 to 6 months, and that will attract a diversification of people. And then we have other the other 2 houses we're building. We're trying to combine with the local hotels at the mainland, where they can, for example, you can have families to come and visit, but nevertheless that you can use like companies, larger companies, they can hold their annual board meetings, etc. And that will require that we would have some sort of skilled labor to service this information.
But incredible to hear the local initiatives here, because that's quite a lot of initiative and diversification already planned in terms of having such a small municipal. I want to ask Leo a little bit of background here, why this surge in research in rural communities is now taking place. I mean, we, of course, with the Premium Project exist because we know that that this is a huge problem for rural communities. We know that rural areas have been facing depopulation for years, and we know also that investments for many years were centered around urban cities and young priorities, perhaps. But Leo, why this surge, and why in also hyper rural areas? Oh, Leo, you're muted. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Anne-Cathrine, and thank everyone. I'm extremely happy as coordinator of this project that there is so much interest in our topics. So no, I'm very happy today to have this here and to participate in it. Your question, well, a little of background. I mean, migration from the rural areas to the cities is from all times. It's called urbanization in a sense. I mean, it's not only from today or yesterday. It's been there all of it a long time already. For a long time, it was not that severe because in the rural areas, like in many countries, we had more birth than death. But this has changed. Now, most European countries face negative growth due to excess death. Aging is prominent. So now we find that migration is key. And then the question is, can migration sort of mitigate or change the direction of the negative growth? And in some areas, yes. In many areas, no. And that sort of brings to the surface the key problems of many rural areas. And if you see that some areas are doing still well and others are not, then the question comes up, what is happening? Why am I doing good, or well, why am I doing not as good as others? So this is something that leads to a search in what are the factors that are behind the choices of migrants to either leave the region or return to the region or come into the region. And so I think that's an important element behind a lot of research. And of course, it is all about livability, as I mentioned a couple of times already this morning, as a key element. And indeed, our project Premium moves away from just the economic factors, which are there, of course. I mean, you need a job somewhere. I mean, you need a living. And we just heard a few very nice examples from Simon that you can create that sort of things also on a small scale. But it's not only about economic dimensions. And we are trying to focus on also these other dimensions which can make a difference. So it's searching for what leads to livability in my region, in my municipality, and how can I attract at least some people in some stage of their life cycle or the life course to make a better community.
Very good points there, Leo, as well, to see the broader aspect that this is also a demographic challenge of aging populations throughout all of Europe. And in fact, a lot more countries outside of Europe, we're seeing this huge problem in changing family dynamics, changing priorities. Perhaps having a family is also seen as a larger challenge when, I mean, not just specific to now, but economic recession, uncertain times, global climate change, and all these things. And I want to bring this over to you, Alessandra, because we had a chat before this event about initiatives for families within the Tuscany region. So I want to ask you, how does the Tuscany regional government incentivize people to move to depopulated peripheral regions, and maybe specifically families, because they know that the challenge is also to not just get people to move and stay, but to feel so comfortable and so settled that they can start a family as well.
Thank you very much. When we first met, I told you about this new regional law that we recently published issued in Tuscany. In Italy, regions hold a shared legislative power with the national government. So that basically we decided to have a holistic law, because that is, I think, the strength of our law. We try to embrace all possible policies that will have to be put in place to contrast the population. Building on the assumption that what Peter was saying at the beginning about equity, we want people, Tuscan people, no matter where they're living, either being Tuscan, born Tuscan, or immigrants in Tuscany, to have the same opportunities, no matter where they live. So what we did try to do was, as I said, bring under this umbrella, this regional umbrella law, all policies going from agriculture to tourism to what concerns, for example, use of buildings, for example, abandoned buildings. Also going from, on the same line of what Leo was saying just now, I mean, we need people that, no matter what, if they're new resident or, you know, newcomers and everything, to have a sense of like place ownership. This is what we really try to do with this law. Like peripheral areas obviously are seen as far away from the main cities, but they are where our history is, where our tradition, where the identity is. So for this reason, building on this, we tried recently, just like last year, we issued a call of about 3 million euros, asking people moving from basically either cities up to the more peripheral parts of the region, also coming from outside, to basically move in. We gave them 50,000 euros each family, obviously, and we received almost 1,000 applications. So we're really glad about it. Obviously, we need to see how it goes. We need to study the impact and everything. But it is obviously the first step.
And that was a housing subsidy, right, Alessandra?
Yeah, exactly.
For families,
to build a house, renew a house. Or, for example, what we did with this law is also provide, well, we will provide incentives also for renting long term, obviously.
Can I quickly ask what the criteria? What's the criteria for a family applying for this kind of incentive or subsidy?
Obviously they will have to stay for like 5 years in Tuscany, and in the call we had different points according also to the size of the family, depending on how many kids they have and everything. So it's a sort of like, we need to start from somewhere. We always say that we need to start from we started from people. Then around it, what we are doing is building a whole bunch of initiatives, for example, because in a work we did attracting nomads, digital nomads in one specific, we asked them, what do you value most? And one of the, obviously the normal replies that you can imagine, but one of them was a vibrant community. So we are working also on everything that brings the people together. And from my point of view, tourism comes afterwards. First of all, we look at the population living there and everything. And obviously, I don't know, enhancement of the environment, the cultural heritage and everything will obviously attract tourists and everything, but we want them to stay long, for a long time in our region. So this is what we're trying to do well, with this law. It's just new because we issued like 2 months ago. So we'll get back to you in I don't know, next year, and then I will tell you more about what's happening and everything. But that everyone is wherever we speak about it, we talk about it, people are really interested because it's one of the first law that's trying to embrace everything. That's what we're trying to do. No single law for each specific aspect, but all together.
Yeah. It's super interesting, especially, Simon also mentioned it before, this diversification that you kind of need to embrace when looking at attracting people is, it's not one solution fits all, but still, I've come previously from government work and know exactly how much evaluation they do and how much impact they want to know which specific sectors bring in most money or bring in most people. And on that note, I want to ask you, Roger, if you can tell us a little bit about development prioritization. We talked a little bit about the Demographic Challenge program when you and I had a chat, and maybe you can go in a little bit to this kind of holistic approach, diverse approach to creating a vibrant community versus something that's more targeted, and how a government, national or local, decides which strategy to take.
Yeah. So yeah, actually, as you said before, no, this is something that is popping out now. No, this agenda of the, here we call it the demographic challenge. No, this idea of even though it's a long history challenge, no, the agenda for population now is in the policy arena. So we have different levels of programs currently in working at the national level. So we have the national program on the demographic challenge, and at the Catalan level, we also have a new legal initiative, which, for instance, is working towards the idea of rural proofing mechanisms and stuff like that. And at the regional, so at the provincial level in Lleida, we have this new also demographic challenge program that it's called, and we're just targeting different aspects, no? And one of these and this one, the one I'm working in, is what also Simon said, no? This idea of the capacity of the local institutions to act, no? To deliver policies and services to the citizens in order to construct or build the conditions to attract newcomers or returnees and stuff like that. So in this matter, I'm working now in this project in which we as development agents are working directly with small municipalities that before us they didn't have any kind of very few skilled professionals, no, working on development policies. So we have to think that Spain and Catalonia is a very fragmented, no, in terms of administration, it's very fragmented. So we have in Catalonia we have almost 1,000 municipalities, no, if you relate to Denmark or Sweden, and the population is it's crazy. And actually we have smaller municipalities than I cannot say the one in
in Faroe Islands,
so it's smaller ones. This is because we have very fragmented very fragmented system of institutions, and that brings us to municipalities with very few capacity to act and develop policies. And when I'm saying policies, it's housing policies, economic policies, service provision, education, health, culture, which is also important, transport. So if no, the point of view is if you cannot provide develop any or very few policies, how can you challenge this big problem, no, which is the demographic decline or the population and stuff like that. So I think it's quite new, this project, no, of bringing professionals to work from this development perspective in the municipalities, in the small municipalities. But still, we are working on that for a year now, so it's very early to say if it's working. But I think it's something that is super important, no, that the municipalities has also the opportunity to think strategically, and no, as we said in the beginning, to develop targeted policies and to identify the goals in the future, and build with the few resources that we have, policies targeting this problem. Otherwise, no, the problem is going to be there, and if we can act in the local layer or the local level, that could be impossible to reverse.
Yeah. But this is super interesting. This kind of development, not only because you're saying, this is a legal initiative, and talking about rural proofing, which I like that term as well. I think we're in the most interesting time of this, because we're also truly seeing if this takes hold, and if it will take ownership in these smaller municipalities. Because one thing is bringing in researchers, externals, or government funded initiatives, but can it last? Can it stay? And can it grow itself? That'll be interesting to see how that develops over these next decades. We got an interesting question here from the chat that I want to ask. Could relationship types such as native versus foreigner-native partnerships, so we're talking about romantic relationships, also influence the success of rural repopulation efforts? For instance, might migrants in relationships with Swedish partners demonstrate different settlement or retention patterns due to stronger support networks or personal incentives? How might policy better account for these relational dynamics when designing strategies for rural integration and population growth? My understanding of this is how you account in smaller municipalities for mixed partnerships, and how to we were talking about this earlier in the group interview with these kind of social onboarding, when you have let's say foreign spouses coming in, or mixed families that don't have this kind of nostalgia for your particular region. Do any of you want to pitch in to answer this question, or with a perspective? I see Alessandra has, for a brief moment, taken a break. That's okay, but maybe I can ask you, Simon. Oh, you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I think that's a very interesting thought, because in the Faroes we had like a gap between men and women, so we do have a lot of people who are moving to the Faroes, and obviously it's important for a small community like ours to make sure that they feel welcome and they can feel the existence, so they don't feel like trash, if you put it like that. We just want to move them to an area that we don't want to move to ourselves, So I think that's definitely a possibility, but obviously for a small community as a Fugløy, it's very limited with men and women, and it's well, I think that could be a part of, say, for example, the service factor. If we are able to create some sort of business that requires services, that would be like a skilled. I mean, when we talk about skilled labor, we're not talking about professors and highly academic educated people. We're talking about labor that's related to whatever might require, and that could also provide an existence for a family. Obviously, we normally say that in Fugløy, for example, we have the lowest income tax in the Faroe Islands for our area, and we have the highest child deduction in taxes, but that's obviously not a financially big problem because we don't have any children. But that gives us an opportunity to attract people to say, for example, you can pay a low tax and you can have a high deduction when you have one or two or three or four children. So we're trying in that terms, in forms of policy, to attract people, and of course people from other countries are more than welcome to add on to our portfolio, I think.
Yeah, that's a super interesting perspective because it brings also to the table these more difficult parameters to measure and also difficult parameters to strategize against. This is this sense of belonging and this sense of feeling settled enough to build a family life, because that's a very vulnerable situation to be in, particularly if you feel like capacity might be vulnerable as well when you're in these rural regions. I mean, you said it yourself, Simon, as well, that if there's no childcare currently, or if there's the cheapest childcare because there is no children, then you also might want to consider, well, who are my children going to play with? What kind of community are they going to have? And so that's also something that I want to ask to the group. And yeah, good that you're back, Alessandra. Maybe I can also ask you when it comes to these more, because you I think have brought up this very important point of this holistic law, and really Tuscany embracing these policies to counter depopulation from a strategic level, from a policy level. But when it comes to belonging and getting the existing rural population, which might already be, let's say, a little tired, a little fatigued of a lot of strategies already, they're having to do a lot. How do they feel about including and integrating new people? Are they on board? They know they need the labor, but are they also on board with the long work of creating belonging?
Well, one of like the cross-cutting theme of all Tuscan laws, and unfortunately, I'm sorry if I come back to this all the time, but
no, it's good.
We always value a lot of participation. We also always ask our citizens to be part of constructing new strategies. So also this fact that we stress so much the role of communities, feeling of belonging and everything is part of the idea that each part of the community needs to feel part of the future perspective, what you as a citizen want to build for your future, especially for future generation and everything. So what we're doing, for example, cultural events and everything are not thought only to, attractions for tourists or something. It's also a way to build a community. What we, especially in Italy in general, we have a strong history of bottom-up approaches. And since, for example, the last programming period, 2014, 2020, we had national strategies for peripheral areas. So what we did in Tuscany, we tried to embrace, in this case, all previous experiences, like think about the leader approach for rural development, or also these strategies for the peripheral areas. And we try to combine them together. Basically, each of them obviously has, a regional fund, well, a European fund, ERDF, for example, or the agricultural fund. So we try to put all of this together. What matters for us is an area, like sub-regional area, where people feel they belong, they're similar. So we work a lot on similarities. And obviously the way to feel newcomers to be part of the community is also through these small things. So that's why we are, for example, today I'm working on another law, because in Italy we have small associations that take care of tradition and the identity of places. And so we are working on two sides, like the economic parts, as Leo was saying. The economic is not everything. We also need people to feel, the ownership, the belong there, the sense of belonging. It's fundamental, especially if you want to repopulate this area, because those are the values. For example, the first article of our law says peripheral areas are the one far away from main centers, but they are the heart of who we are. See my point? So this is the way we're working.
Mm. Super interesting. And I think a lot of the value in this kind of research is also meeting these, as we at least say in Denmark, fire souls, these passionate people who you really need when it comes to these laws, because those are the kind of people the laws arise from, and they're also the ones in the implementation as well. I want to ask Leo to kind of start the conclusion a bit by saying what research can do in this case, because research has become, I believe, also a bit more holistic. When we look at our project, for example, we try to bridge the gap between the very hard statistics and numbers and economic, data behind and indicators showing what decline looks like and how it happens, but also connect to the stories of migrants, to what their priorities are and what their needs are to feel like they belong. Leo, can you tell us a little bit about that gap and why research can create a bridge?
Yeah, well, I can try. Of course, it's my personal opinion to some extent, but I mean, we talked about various dimensions and diversity, both in terms of the quality of the region and the characteristics of migrants, and there should be a fit. And we talked about economic, social, environmental elements in what a region, what the makeup of a region is. And I think in the past, research and policies have been very much geared towards economic and infrastructural measures. They are very costly sometimes, and we can see lots of sort of efforts that have been with lots of money involved, which were a failure. On the other hand, we also see that if you talk about belonging, nostalgia, the sense of identity, these are other things. And if you really ask people what is important in their region, of course, they need a job, they need the economic basis of that. But what is really important are sometimes small things, relatively small things, not a big road or a huge factory, whatever. Especially these small things have been lost in many regions, like a community center, the sports club that sort of ceased to exist. Well, you can name it. Things that really make people feel at home. And since the economic model that we have doesn't support lots of these things, they disappear. Whereas you might focus on that sort of things in policies. For families, as Alessandra said, there's lots of things that would make a region attractive to families or to retirees or whatever. Research can really sort of find can give inspiration for that sort of things, and we need to experiment a little bit with that. What would it mean if we create a sort of a community center with some public investment? And of course, volunteer work is extremely important here. I mean, it's the resilience and the sort of the social and cultural power of a community. And that is also sort of lost, I think, in research or not taken up. And we are very much dominated also by the sort of economic paradigm, or I don't know, but I would think that research could bridge the gap here. And I really hope that our project could somehow, by collecting policies, sometimes small scale policies, sometimes a little larger scale, direct the way which would be feasible for policymakers and give inspiration to the sort of things that really work, sometimes on small scales, as Simon mentioned for his region. It is sometimes about very small things that really make the character of a region. It could be some old building that is in the center of a city or a municipality that gives the municipality its character. And we need that sort of things much more also in focus in research, and then bring it to the fore for policymakers to really do something with that. That's my provisional conclusion of this morning.
Thank you very much, Leo. I think that also sums up quite well. I mean, we've covered quite a lot during this panel discussion. The kind of national-local funding divide that's being conquered, as it seems, as of now, but also how this kind of like policy, grassroots to policy level, needs to happen more organically, and is happening. And thanks to a lot of these more diverse approaches to the strategies needed. And I think that's something we also try to encapsulate in our research. That's also why we need policymakers and to hear from practitioners like you. So we're very, very thankful that you could join us today and share these perspectives. I truly mean that, and hope that we can stay in touch for the rest of our research project and beyond. And we will definitely get in touch with. But with that, I want to say thank you very much to the panelists for your contributions. And now we go over to the next segment, the final segment, which is the second group interview. And I will hand over to Peter, who will be moderating that. Over to you, Peter.
Well, thank you so much, Anne-Catherine, and thank you all for staying until the fireside chat, as I dubbed it. Thought a group interview, we've heard that before. I even took my jacket off, you've seen me before, but it's kind of warm at the fireside chat, I guess. So what we want to do in the next 15 minutes or so is have a brief talk with two experts. And I think it will be in line of what we heard today. I mean, we heard a lot about policies. I think we're roughly on the same page. Everybody is agreeing that it shouldn't be only on economics, but we should be looking at the small things, like Leo was just saying. I really enjoyed the rural proofing idea. I think a lot of us are working on that. So I think there's a lot of stuff going on, and we need to find some common ground, but I think we agree on a lot. Well, as I said before, in the Premium EU project, we've been looking at regional development and migration and the interaction between those. A lot of it will be made available on the policy dashboard. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But we also believe that while preparing this, it would also be nice to zoom in a little bit on two aspects. So on youth, so why is youth staying or not? And also on digitalization, because those are topics that are really important at the moment. And they can also help to change a region slightly, bringing more people in, or use digital infrastructure to attract more people or to retain more people. So I'm really honored that I have two experts for this, because and one of them, Hilma, she's working at Noordregio as a senior research fellow, and she's really focused and experienced in sustainability transitions, remote location, and energy politics. And she's looking a lot at the very rural areas. So that's really interesting to see how youth can play a role in that. And on the other hand, we have Anastasia Panori. She's assistant professor at the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. And she has a background, and I think that's really interesting, in electrical and computer engineering, but a PhD in regional development. So she's really well equipped to talk about, the digitalization aspect. She's also part of our sister project, the Mobi Twin project, which is also European funded. And that one is looking at, the dual transition, so the twin transition, digitalization and green transition. She'll probably say a few words about that later on. And I really like this because I think it's really nice to have two complementary experts together to talk about youth and digitalization. But before we kick off, I'd like to start with a question to both of you. And I'm going to read this out loud, so both can have an answer to that. If you were 25 again and just starting your career and could move anywhere, remotely, urban or rural, just based on your lifestyle, where would you go and why? May I start with you, Hilma?
This really reminds me of when I was 25 and I dumped my boyfriend of the time and I moved to London. So I would do it again. And why is, of course, I was looking for a new start, and you really don't get a new start like you can get by moving to a big city like that.
So, but you moved away, I guess. So you moved away again and you moved somewhere else. We'll talk about that later on. Thank you. And how about you, Anastasia?
Well, if I was 25 again, I think I would go to an island and work remotely from there, have the sun, not on one island, but probably do island hopping, a lot of islands, every month to a different island.
Okay.
So I didn't do that, but if I were 25 again, I would do that.
Nice to know. So maybe we could keep that in mind by exploring, well, regions to attract younger people. Yeah, for me, it's the same. I moved away a little bit, but I also moved back to the region where I'm currently located now. And I was a little bit too scared to go away when I was 25. So maybe there could be some policies help to promote with that. Okay, let's go back and focus on the content a little bit. Hilma, your work at Noordregio is focusing a lot on the extremely remote rural areas. Could you say a little bit about the key factors influencing early career professionals' decisions to leave at these places?
Yeah, I was listening on the presentations before, and I noticed a lot of points were already raised. So people move for different reasons at the different stages of their lives. But then we also see that people kind of start going into these typologies of different types of movers. So for example, people who start living a very mobile lives, maybe they leave a rural region and then they stay very mobile, and they're very open to grasp new opportunities, for example, move to a different country or try remote work. And then people who stay, of course, they are more likely to continue staying. So it's a little bit of like these different trajectories that start very early on in life.
Yeah, and for example, I mean, so we did some research, and I think in Iceland, a lot of the people are returning. Do you have any idea why that is? So why are some regions more suited, or I don't know, well connected, or whatever kind of reasons there are to attract to go for people to return? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, Iceland is very interesting because it has a very strong pendulum effect. So most people leave, but then a lot of people who leave, they will also return. And for reasons we asked why they return or what they appreciate about where they return. So they mentioned these very strong personal reasons. So a strong personal bond, a strong sense of community, social networks. So different kind of social reasons that kind of apparently draw people back in. But then there can also be some negative reasons. For example, a lot of people in Iceland, they move in search of a more suitable housing. So there might be a lot of people who didn't wish to move in the first place, but they are forced to go and look for something else before then they can return later.
Yeah, so roughly a combination of non-policies like social networks, but also you need to have, like we've been talking before, some necessary ground, have like houses available, jobs available, but then social dimensions are really important. Okay, thank you. And how about you, Anastasia? You are in the Mobi Twin project, so looking at different transitions. You can say a little bit about that. And also on the digital transformation, digital infrastructure. So what do you mean by that? And what could digital infrastructures, how could that work? How could that help to attract younger people or stay for people to return? Can you say a little bit about that?
Well, yes. Thank you for inviting us. First of all, in the Mobitin project, we're trying to diversify and rethink about regional attractiveness using the idea of the twin transition. So we want to see whether traditional factors, green factors, or digital factors are the ones that mostly affect at different life stages the decision of someone to move, to migrate. So what we have seen until now is that depending, as also the previous panelists said, depending on the life stage that each individual is, different factors affect their decisions. We also have seen that traditional factors related to work and wage differentials are the key drivers for young people to move, and they will probably go to large urban areas. But when it comes to people about 35 to 45, when they want to start a family, we have seen that the factors related to quality of life and green factors start to play a significant role. And this is where digitalization comes as a means, as a tool, let's say, that could help probably rural areas or less developed areas to attract that kind of potential migrants. So we think that digitalization is a mediator, has a mediation effect for these areas to help them trigger on the green opportunities they offer for increased quality of life. So this is the main idea behind digitalization. So, okay, it is the infrastructure, but it acts as a mediation to trigger the green attractiveness that these rural areas have in individual decision making. So this is the main idea of digital factors. And I have seen it also from our personal experience. I have seen people coming back from deciding to come back from large urban areas, large cities, in less developed areas or towns or probably villages, only if they have the opportunity, if they know that they could access job and labor market digitally, work remotely from their areas, and they know that the infrastructure there where they decide to move is sufficient to offer them these opportunities. So when we talk about the twin transition, we see how the digital factors can help to trigger green opportunities for rural areas. This is the
interesting.
idea.
So you're really drawing on the two positive sides, and so putting infrastructure there, and so people come and they could also use the things I've also been mentioning: green spaces, green parks, the maybe cheaper houses, etc. That's really interesting. Would there also be a downside to that, if I can be a little bit critical? So, for example, if you focus a lot on digital infrastructure, will some people be left out, or you're not scared of that?
Well, this is a matter of policy, because at the same time, when we focus on digital infrastructure, we have to reskill people in urban areas, in rural areas, how to use digital tools. But I think that they might also open new opportunities for people that are left behind, because people who are not being able to move from a specific rural area, they might have access to many labor markets that it was not possible for them previously. So this is also a means to retain population in rural areas. And of course, I don't know, digital infrastructures can also help increase inclusiveness in terms of gender, for example. This is also what we have also seen in the analysis of the data.
And this is a question for the two of you. I mean, so if you look at this, maybe Hilmar can start. Do you think that hearing this, that digitalization could be a key thing? Do you see any signs for that? The more remote, the more digital they have to be? Put it black and white.
Yeah, definitely in the Nordic countries, there is a policy focus on that when we think of rural attractiveness. For example, in Finland, where I'm from, there is a lot of very sparsely populated regions. And I think it was maybe the first country that has decreed the legal right to have access to fast internet. So not just a broadband connection, but a fast broadband connection, and also has a remote work strategy. And then in Iceland, there is this rule that all state jobs should be able to also be done remotely. So there is a lot of these policy linkages between rural attractiveness and digitalization, remote work.
Yeah, exactly. So that's really a law now, so that you could always, you're also able to work from home. You need to have access to internet. That's a great thing. Maybe from a policy perspective. Do you also see this, Anastasia, in your research? Do you see these examples, like policies or signs that this is actually working, focusing on the digital?
Yes, policies, as Hilmar mentioned, are very relevant and are what you need to have to start as a basis to think that digitalization could act as a mediation for uncovering the green attractiveness of these areas. And also, I think that policies also related to digital nomads could also offer a good opportunity to not to think of long movements and people coming back to stay in a rural area. But what we have also seen is that there is a potential for less populated areas or left behind areas to have gains in terms of from circular migration. So we think that if the idea of smart villages, for example, if we create hubs, digital hubs in that kind of areas, they might experience an increased flow of circular migrants, which could also be very beneficial for these areas for boosting globalization or whatever the circular migration positive things brings to these to rural areas, for example, exchanging experiences, making them more open and things like that. So I think a combination for attractive long movements residents to come back and stay in their areas, but also to attract circular migrants could be the best opportunity for rural areas to gain from that kind of from digital infrastructures, at least.
And from your research and experience, what kind of specific policies could you said something about hubs, but is it creating hubs? Is it creating the infrastructure as such? So do you have any concrete examples of this?
Well, I know that in Navarra in Spain, I think they have a policy for, and also in Greek island, I don't remember the name, but they subsidize people from going there to stay for 3 months, for example, digital nomads. So they subsidize staying in the area, provide I think 2,000 euros per month or something, so they can go there and stay and do remote working from there. Another idea that we have been working on in a different project is that it could be also very relevant to find some specific research areas that these rural or remote areas may face, problems that they need to address, and invite researchers from other areas to work on data analysis and provide hackathons or things like that related to digital infrastructures, of course, how they can help them solve that kind of issues and that kind of problems. So this is another idea, another policy that we have been working on.
Oh, interesting. So that's really focused. So it's really concrete, giving people money to stay, to see how beautiful the area is, and then they are staying. Well, that's a great example. Thank you.
Not only money, but incentives to go there and see also the green potential of this area, to unlock the green attractiveness aspect. This is the idea.
Nice. Okay. Thank you so much. And Hilma, so we talked about those social bonds, place, sense of place. I also said a few words about it in the first presentation. Do you have any ideas? Do you have any examples how you could help to policy-wise, or how do you strengthen maybe not social networks, but how can you exploit the potential of it to get people to return? You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have thought about it a lot. It is a little bit difficult to say, right? What forms a sense of place? It's a little bit of like what forms an identity. Of course, if you have a family farm from the 17th century, it's easy to see it, but it's not really something that you can create. But I think that what I have come across is many different projects is that it's important that the municipality or region seems active, and an active municipality seems more vital, so that they are doing something, for example, being that there's some new projects maybe related to green transition or something like that, or some international cooperation, or it can be anything, but then people feel like they haven't given up, there's things to happen, and then I can feel a little bit of proud about living here, and maybe it also makes it feel a bit more inclusive, that there are new things happening.
Yeah, so you really should, I don't know, somehow market, but not really in marketing sense, but mark the region to show that a lot of stuff is going on, so people are willing to go back and to see that it's really lively and that they can actually do things here. So it's really about reviving the area by showing how great it is actually and how innovative, things like that. Yeah, that's a great idea, I guess. Yeah, and well, it's already time for the last question. It goes by so fast. So we talked a lot about those policies, enhancing the quality of life and things like that. And well, you also talked about what you would have been doing or what you did when you were 25. What kind of policies could have, maybe this is a difficult question, but what kind of policies could have, I don't know, somehow made you want to go there, for example? So Anastasia, you talked about the islands when you were 25. What could they have done? What could politicians, policymakers could have done to get you there?
When I was 25,
yeah,
digital connection was not very good. So first of all, I think this could be a very good option. And I know that there are still islands that face a lot of digital disruptions in terms of difficulties, not disruptions. Another thing is that I think that they should probably offer a very concrete package, let's say, for people who want to go there and stay for 1 or 2 for short time. So I feel that offering a comprehensive experience, not because they're used to welcome tourists, so they somehow they need to change this and try to welcome researchers or different nomads. So they should probably offer a policy to how to attract these persons in terms of offering the infrastructure, in terms of, I don't know, internet cafes or communities, for example, to know what's better, people who go there, or online groups, things like that. So I think that if I feel that, yes, that could be from my side, from my point of view. If I was 25, I would like to go somewhere that I know that I can meet other people like me.
Yeah, but that's a good point. So not focusing on tourists only, but also on other types of people. Eh? And how about you, Helma? So you moved to London for a while, maybe because of your boyfriend. But would it be possible to get you be staying there? So could they have done anything to allow you to stay for a little bit longer, or did you want to move back? So what policies could have helped you to stay a little bit longer in the UK?
Not if I think about, I'm from a small village in Finland, and there's no policy that would have made me stay there. But I also feel like I haven't really left it. I'm going back. I'm gonna work from my parents' place next week from that village, and I feel like these kind of lines are becoming a little bit more blurred. So I live a little bit here in Stockholm. I live a little bit there. I work here. I work there. It's not so binary anymore, and I think that is also a chance for a lot of remote places to see.
So the change is already happening. I think we could agree on that. Okay, well, that's very nice. Well, thank you so much for this. I think I'll give the floor back to Anne-Catherine. Thanks so much for sharing some insights. And I totally agree with you. Change is happening now, and we could just tap into that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Peter. Well kept time as well. So we have a bit extra here at the end for a poll that will come in a little bit. But first, I want to say a big thanks to Hilma, Anastasia, and Peter for these specific and very important migration perspectives. It was almost a brainstorm, which I really loved that we did as well. And we'll be doing much more of that in the coming year of our research project. So thank you very much for that. And thank you to all our speakers, panelists, and all of you in the audience. As we've seen, rural repopulation is not just a matter of numbers, it's a matter of identity, opportunity, and imagination. Behind every migration statistic is a human decision to stay, to leave, or return. And sometimes, like Hilma said, it's not so binary. Sometimes you stay, you leave, and you do all of it. You decide to circle back. But today's discussions have shown us that attracting skilled migrants is not just about a single policy or investment. It is about weaving together housing, services, culture, jobs, and most importantly, community, creating the conditions where people don't just move, but truly belong. Before we close, we would like your quick input for another poll. It will be coming up on your screens now. If your region wanted to attract someone like you, what should it focus on first? And here you can decide between better jobs, affordable housing, social life, community, nature, quality of life, remote work infrastructure. Maybe it's more than that. And if it's not included, please put it in the chat. We would love to know. And on that note, we would also love if you could put in the chat what you're most interested in hearing more about from the Premium EU project. We have still a ways to go until we finish this project, and we want to get more workshops going, more webinars. So we would really like to hear what you want to know more about. And on a few final notes on what's next. So today's recording will be shared with you by email after this. And then I would also like to say that at Premium EU, we're currently building a digital dashboard that visualizes data you can see it here, and customizes knowledge and policies based on a region's very specific development challenges or political priorities, and both. This is just a screenshot from the dashboard. It will function in a very user-friendly way where you can choose your region, choose your political prioritization, and it will show you exactly how your region is holding up compared to other regions in Europe, and also give you suggestions specifically based on your region and your political priorities. This is very exciting. It's being built right now. And if you're working with strategy or policy implementation, we want you to be the first to see and use this migration policy tool. So please use the QR code on the screen to sign up for our regional resilience expert group to get a sneak peek and test the first version of the dashboard. We would love to have you on board to give us feedback and also to be able to use this tool. If you would like to stay updated and receive the invitation to our final conference in March 2026, but also the other webinars that we'll probably have as well before then, please do subscribe to the Premium EU newsletter. And I would just like to say that on behalf of everyone at Nordregio and the Premium EU team, thank you once again for your participation and all the important work that you do. We finished a little bit early, so if you have any questions left, please do put them in the chat. We will save them, keep them, and have them for next time. And once again, thank you to our great speakers and panelists again. Have a wonderful day.